windows open, and I had designed a steroid cycle to maximize muscle mass while minimizing hair loss, acne, and DHT spike. And it said, here's a sample that may help you achieve your goals. 500 milligrams of testosterone, test E or C per week. Nandrolone decanoate, 300 milligrams per week. Anavar, 50 milligrams per day for 6 weeks. Arimidex, 1 milligram per day throughout the cycle. Okay, based on what? Finasteride, 1 milligram per day throughout the cycle. Novadex, 20 milligrams per day for 2 weeks after the cycle ends. Now, there are problems with the cycle. Number one, the testosterone is very high. That definitely is not going to be good for hair loss, even at 1 milligram per day with finasteride. Even, because, you know, just by making a little calculation of how much the DHT is going to spike, 1 milligram of finasteride is probably not going to be able to control that, and you might need to add dutasteride, or you may need to add more finasteride to control all the DHT that will result from the test. So it says use a low-dose, long-acting steroid like enanthate or cypionate, as they have a low risk of causing hair loss and acne. Incorporate a DHT blocker. Use a mild anabolic like Anavar. Monitor your hormone levels regularly. Use post-cycle therapy after Novadex. Okay. I said Anavar is a DHT compound and causes hair loss. It says, yes, you are correct. Anavar oxandrolone is a DHT derivative and it can potentially cause hair loss in some individuals. However, it is generally considered to have a lower risk of causing hair loss compared to other anabolic steroids like testosterone and androlone. So basically it adjusted when I called it out, almost like it adjusted the answer. It says, okay, use a lower dose of Anavar, use a DHT blocker. That doesn't work, okay, with Anavar, because Anavar is not going to be subject to reduction via the 5-alpha reductase. So consider alternative steroids. And then it says using alternative steroids with a lower risk of causing hair loss, such as primapolin or Winstrol, which is another DHT derivative that is basically notorious for hair loss. I mean, if you go to Winstrol, right, and you just read its wiki page, okay, go to pharmacology and mechanism of action. Its affinity for the androgen receptor is about 22% of that of the hydrotestosterone. It's not a substrate of 5-alpha reductase, as it is already 5-alpha reduced. Okay. The problem is it's DHT derivative. Okay, this is the problem. So it's a 15A alkylated androstenedione steroid and a derivative of 5-alpha dihydrotestosterone with a methyl group at the C17A position, right? So see this right here. It's a DHT derivative. That's notorious, like, for hair loss. You don't want to you want to stay away from DHT derivatives if you want to avoid hair loss. And this is the answer that it gave me. So this is so it recommended, I said, okay, so I said, you're wrong. A DHT blocker would not work with Anavar, which is a DHT derivative. It says, you are correct. My previous response was incorrect. DHT blockers like finasteride or dutasteride are not effective in preventing hair loss caused by DHT derivatives like Anavar. To minimize the risk of hair loss while using Anavar, you can consider the following strategies. Use a lower dose alternative, use a DHT based steroid with a lower risk of hair loss, like Winstrol. So I'm going to say about Winstrol is another DHT derivative. And it causes hair loss, has a high probability of causing hair loss. Yes, you are correct. Winstrol is a DHT derivative and it can potentially cause hair loss in some individuals. However, it's generally considered, okay, the same thing. Lower dose DHT blocker. Keep saying use DHT blocker. It's not going to work with a DHT derivative like cholesterol, because they're not subject to reduction. You understand? They're not subject to the 5-alpha reductase. They're already a DHT derivative with an added group. They're going to cause hair loss straight away. You're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to prevent, because it is not a substrate for 5-alpha reductase and is already 5-alpha reduced. Okay. It's already 5-alpha reduced. So it says it's not potentiated in the so-called androgenic tissue, but actually what it is, it is. It is potentiated. So this is as far as liquid.ai. Okay, now let's go to OpenAI. Let's go to ChatGPT, right? So with ChatGPT, it says, okay, design the same stuff, right? The same thing. Design a steroid cycle to maximize muscle mass while minimizing hair loss, acne and DHT spiking. Testosterone base, low dose 100 150 per week. That's way better. That's way better. Deca 300 to 400 milligrams per week. That's way better. Primobolan 400 to 600 milligrams per week. Also Anavar. You can see that these language models almost are copying from the same source, because they're getting their information from the stuff that's on the internet. So it's like almost they're getting it from the same source. Like it's like almost the same exact cycle, right? Except that with little differences. That this Liquid AI says 500 milligrams per week. OpenAI says 100 to 150 milligrams per week. 300 Deca Primobolan, also Anavar. And then support compounds, DHT blocker. Now, because I've been having a lot of conversations with AI, with OpenAI, and I've been mentioning a lot of things on like topical hair loss treatments and stuff like that. So it did mention to me things that I've mentioned before, like using RU or minoxidil, also using an aromatase inhibitor, Accutane, and so basically I'm going to say the same thing. Anavar is a DHT compound and causes hair loss. You're absolutely right. Anavar is a DHT derivative and can contribute to hair loss, particularly in individuals who are genetically predisposed to male pattern baldness. Updated cycle, hair-friendly version. I thought this is what I asked in the first place. Okay. 100, 150, also Deca, also Primobolan, and then it basically replaced the Anavar with T-ball. Replaced the Anavar with T-ball, Primobolan, T-ball, Nandrolone, and Test. Support compounds, finasteride or durasteride, RU, AI, aromatase inhibitor. Rationale for Turnable, no DHT conversion, a good anabolic to androgenic ratio. By removing Anavar, okay. That's a lot better. That's a lot better. Okay, so the funny thing is, I had a conversation with OpenAI with ChatGPT before, but I actually made a mistake in the sense that it almost mentioned the same thing that was mentioned by Liquid Labs. Let me try and reload this right here. And I forgot Primobolan. What was the pharmacology of Primobolan? Was it a derivative? Also, Primobolan is a derivative of DHT. What's the rationale behind choosing all these DHT derivatives for a hair safe cycle? Like, why? Anyways, I go back. To the one that I had before that, because I had a conversation with OpenAI before that, and it made almost the same mistake that Liquid AI made, right? This is not the first conversation that I had with it. So, base compound, minimal testosterone, primary anabolic, DECA, Primobolan, non-aromatizing, and then oral kickstart, Anavar. DHT blockers and protective agents, finasteride, topical minoxidil, AI, Arimidex, cycle duration. So I said, okay, Anavar's DHT compound causes hair loss. You're correct. And can contribute to hair loss. If minimizing hair loss is a key priority, it would be best to avoid DHT-based compounds like Anavar in your cycle. Here's the cycle revised. And you can see that these AI models are technically copying the information that's on all the forums and all the bodybuilding websites and the gear websites on the internet. You can tell that basically they're not they're not able to reason from like first order logic. These AI models, they're copying what's on the internet. Just the cycle of like DECA, Primobolan is like what, like it's mentioned in so many forums, bodybuilding forums. It's just copying what's on there. So it says now the revised cycle: base compound, minimal testosterone, primary anabolic, Dandrolone, then Primobolan, and then T-ball. So it goes for T-ball instead of Anavar. So, and for the other one, okay, so it goes for T-ball instead of Anavar. Okay, well, actually, it did that the second time too. So oral T-ball, 30-50 milligrams for the first 4 to 6 weeks. Primobolan, DECA, testosterone, cypionate, and anthate, 75 to 150 per week minimal, and that's it. So I would definitely say that the answer of OpenAI was better, since, I mean, Liquid AI didn't know what the hell it was doing, and basically it said, instead of Anavar, it gave me Winstrol, which is even worse than Anavar for hair. Winstrol is not hair friendly as a DHT derivative. Anavar and Winstrol, they're both DHT derivatives. I would stay away from both of them for hair loss. Yeah, I would do T-ball. T-ball is not as devastating to the hair as DHT derivatives. T-ball, you know. So basically, this is just, okay, like rundown of a steroid cycle designed by AI and just reasoning through it, right? Reasoning through why did you make these choices. Okay, so what about Primobolan? Primo is also a DHT derivative, and it doesn't aromatize, as it says here. It says that, well, in ChatGPT it says it doesn't aromatize. This is what it says. So, and on the second version also it reduced the test a little bit. So 100 and 150 milligrams per week of test. It could be down to 75 milligrams. DECA 300 to 400 milligrams per week. Primo 400 to 600 milligrams per week. Injectable T-ball, Turnaball, 40 to 60 milligrams per week. Support compounds: finasteride, dutasteride, topical RU, aromatase inhibitor. I don't think it would have mentioned this topical RU if I hadn't been having conversations with it in the past and talking a lot about hair loss and stuff like that, and just basically mentioning RU to it. Because if I just go to a ChatGPT that doesn't have history and I ask it basically the same question, I don't think it's going to mention to me the hair support on cycle. I think the hair support was mentioned because I talked with it in the past, and it learned from memory of past conversations that I mentioned all these compounds about hair loss, so it basically stores these things in memory. I don't think it would have mentioned it if I, explicitly didn't mention it to it and had conversations with it in the past about the hair loss compounds like RU. So that's one thing that's very interesting, right? Now, Liquid Labs. Well, Liquid, I don't have an account with Liquid Labs, so the thing about it is that it probably won't have the same memory function that OpenAI has, since I talk with OpenAI a lot, and it memorizes the stuff that I say to it, so it's able to incorporate and provide better answers based on the history of where I'm coming from. It understands my perspective better and where I'm coming from better, right? It's basically with OpenAI, ChatGPT. But I think with Liquid Labs, if they allow me to make an account and they store the information, the memory like OpenAI, they're probably going to have better answers too, because they gear it towards what you want. Now, let's go back here and says, okay, I'm going to say replace Winstrol with something that doesn't cause hair loss. And let me guess, would it replace it with T-ball? Or would it replace it with something else? So it said testosterone still 500 milligrams per week, way too high. Primo, Arimidex, Proscar, and Novadex. You can consider using Primobolan. It's a mild anabolic steroid that has low risk of causing hair loss, blah, blah, blah. So it basically just removed the compound altogether without replacing it with anything else, even though I said replace Winstrol with something that doesn't cause hair loss. I said replace, and it didn't replace. So I don't know now how like these LFMs, how better are they that like are than LLMs, basically, because they supposedly represent a new generation of AI systems that are designed with both performance and efficiency in mind. And they got 37.6 million in seed funding, and so on and so forth. And the LFM 1B model put in especially a dominating performance on benchmarks such as MMLU and ARC-C. So, I might get into details at some point with this exact model, but for now, I definitely don't think that anybody should be relying on AI to design a steroid cycle for them right now. And I'm going to explore this stuff even more in the future and have AI design even more steroid cycles or more anabolic cycles and ask it way more questions. It made so many mistakes in the past with me, like, I'm just going to show examples of all the mistakes that it made, and I kept just correcting it. And basically these models, they learn when you correct them. So all these corrections, they take that and they incorporate that into their system and they learn. So they won't make the same mistake again, at least with you, right? So one time I made a mistake with me telling me that nandrolone was more androgenic than testosterone. And I just caught it right away and I just corrected it and I was like, oh, you are wrong. And it says, yes, you are right. The funny thing is when they're wrong, like, they just almost like accept what you say and they have no logical reasoning ability whatsoever. They're not able, these models are basically, they copy what's on the internet and then they basically throw it up to you. They don't have any ability to reason from first order logic by understanding the principles of something like anybody would do. Not anybody, like somebody who is a logical thinker would do. They just copy what's in the internet and give you all this information. Like when you ask it about designing a steroid cycle, they copy what's in the internet and they basically give it to you. They don't reason for themselves, or they don't really think for themselves. So with that being said, In future videos, I'm having design more things and explore this more. I'm gonna also talk about my experience with cognitive function using use heroics to boost my memory and boost my cognitive function, and the experiences that I had with that based on the metrics that I measured in my experience. So that being said, perfecthumanx.com to reach the perfect version of you, and I'll see you in the next video.